3 gave us our 50th Stag Bowl, and it also gave us probably the best game that I personally have watched all season. I say that in terms of just excitement and competitiveness and just the fact that I was literally standing for most of the game. Here to talk about it with me, another man who thoroughly enjoyed it. Jimmy, dude. That one was electric. I think it was just about everything we could have asked for out of a championship.
Yeah, certainly so. And being that, we talked about this a little bit on the show on Monday last week, but so the over-under this game was 89, right? And the spread was North Central was a 17-point favorite.
Yeah.
In this one. So that was one of the biggest spreads of the entire playoff slate to begin with. But so I was halftime 7-3. I looked around, I'm like, who decided this game should be over under 89? Obviously, an absolute explosion of offense in the second half, accounting for, I want to say, 67 points in the second half, and 1 in the fourth quarter as well. So
yeah, and then North Central, man, in the red zone in the first half, just cannot get it done. And they had no problem driving down really the length of the field, which is probably the craziest part, I think, in all of that, is their offense from their own 20 to the opposing 20, lights out, right? Like, absolutely have no problems. But then they get to the red zone, and I think when you talk about the Cortland defense, is that just where, like, literally bend, don't break is probably the best example of that we've seen in a while, dude.
Yeah, talk about a direct definition. If you look up a picture in the dictionary of bend, don't break, it's just a picture of a red dragon. That's all it is.
That was huge. And Coach Spencer had talked about, going into before half, like, this very well could have been 21-3. And yeah, it could have been. Like, you see the plays they rip off here. They get right down to the red zone and for whatever reason just can't punch it in. They did Cortland's defensive line and the linebacking core, that front seven, did a great job of limiting Lanen's ability to scramble, because we've seen the Gallardi winner, his ability to get outside the pocket and make plays with his legs. They did a great job of limiting him. That played really sound assignment football, kept him contained. But, I mean, that one right there, the ball off D'Angelo Hardy's hands, that first possession down there, just like maybe 2 feet lower, and that's a touchdown to open things up for North Central. Everything, the margin of error was just right here, dude.
Yeah, and that's just brutal. You look back, there's just so much. Everyone says, "Oh, the 2-point conversion play." No, dude. Like, just because it was the end of the game. That's what
we'll get there. We'll get there.
I know. There's so many little plays you can pick out throughout the entire game. I thought a really intriguing stat. So, scored 7 points in the first half. They ran for over 200 yards in the first half.
Dude.
These were 7 points.
Sacco was having a game. You see one of his long runs here, and he's busting off these incredibly solid runs. And I think that's obviously a credit to their offensive line unit as well. We've talked a lot about that front five. But you see here, Cortland getting back, getting pressure. Lanen has not seen this kind of pressure from a defensive line unit very much, if at all, this season. I don't believe, especially when you're behind that front five. They're able to get back there, even with the strip here and the turnover in the red zone. Just another one of those ways they were stopping the Cardinals when it came to time. And generating turnovers was huge. How about the man, Zach Boyes? He busts off this 28-yard run. The announcer calls it a grown man run, and that was just the first of many for number 12, also in the red and white.
Yeah, so not too often do you lead the team in passing and rushing, and he did both of those things. 349 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Also ran for 123. I mean, and Zach's quite an athlete, but I was not expecting him to run for 123 yards against the North Central Cardinals.
No, not at all. And I think Lanen's ability to get out of the pocket and make plays with his legs has been talked about definitely a bit more than Zach's. And I think part of that, too, is look at their receiving core for Cortland. The stats that those guys finished with, guys like Lapp. And, you look at Burgess, who finished with 11 catches on the day for 134, 2 tuds. Dude, Lapp with another tud. He had that long one down the sideline, 2 for 75. And then Iadivio, 8 catches, 95 yards, 2 tuds.
How am I going to pronounce this? Yeah,
I love that. I love that. What did he say? They called him Joey Cutlets.
Yeah, I can't believe he's a freshman, dude. That's wild.
Is he really?
Yeah, I believe he's either a redshirt freshman or a true freshman. So
yeah, but I mean, talk about that defense too. Cortland, obviously, like they got it done in the first half. That was huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you hold North Central to 7 points, North Central had scored 21 or more in every first half of the entire season before the championship game.
That's great. That's a stat, dude. And it was like they're so used to getting up on these teams, and that's where it came into question last week. That's a credit to North Central when you go against a team like Wartburg. They were able to come back, albeit for a very short period being behind. They were able to come back and get that win against a super quality opponent. North Central's defense also stepping up in the red zone in the first half. They were playing out of their minds as well, because you look at the Cortland offense, what they've been able to do against teams like Alma and like Randolph-Macon last week, and this playoff run that they've had, and to limit them. You know, we talk about limiting North Central's offense, limiting this Red Dragon offense was an impressive feat in itself. And Cortland's defense, I mean, they got going. I think their secondary might have been a little suspect at times in the open field, but that front seven, that core for them, when it got down to crunch time, was huge. They had 3 sacks on the day, a couple more tackles for loss. Jaden Martinez was flying around the field. He finished with 10 tackles to lead that Red Dragon defense. Man. Hold on, you're muted. You're muted, Jim. You're muted. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Still nothing. So North Central, they eventually get their first score here. Nice little play with only 57 seconds left. Like, it took them that long to find their way into the end zone to even get the first points of the contest. Now, for me, though, big piece, you always talk about the first, you know, the minute or couple minutes going into the half and then the couple minutes coming out of the half. Cortland, I guess, technically wins that. They get the field goal to at least have some points on the board going into halftime, and they were the first to score coming out of half. And I don't believe, did they start with the ball after halftime?
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
So they would go down and score, and that was big for me. That swing right there was very big for me, to score going into the half and to be the first ones to score coming out of the half. And I imagine too, like, their mindset going into halftime, not that they thought they couldn't compete with these guys, right? They obviously have all the confidence in the world, but to think that and then to do it for a whole half has to be a very different thing. So the confidence going into the second half was absolutely huge for those guys, I have to imagine.
Oh yeah, and absolutely. So I was actually watching that post-game interview with Coach.
Yep.
And you know, all he really said was like, the general message was like, we have to believe in ourselves. Like, that's the only thing. And like, once you have an entire team rallied around one idea, man, like, things get a whole lot easier. So they knew they could do it the whole time, and obviously they showed us that as well. So
yeah, man, and I wanted to show this off. This catch from Burgess. You remember the toe drag in the corner of the end zone?
Oh yeah,
there?
I was saying that earlier. Yeah,
pump fake from Boys over to Burgess, and he gets the left foot like barely, but it was clear. He got that down.
Yeah,
the call on the field was that it was incomplete. They go back, review that thing. I mean, talk about if that one doesn't go, and now we are certainly in a very different contest. They make the right call. By the way, Burgess knew before anyone. He was celebrating way before they even made any kind of. They must have came over and told Coach, and he relayed that to him almost immediately, because the boys were getting ready to go like way before we got any news. I thought that was funny, but that catch was huge because they take the lead. They kind of put the weight on a North Central here, and they got to go do something, which they would, because it's the second half. They go down and respond almost immediately. And 65 combined points in the second half, dude. I think you said, what, 41 just in the fourth quarter alone?
Yep.
Fireworks.
Yeah. I mean, we knew at some point that the offenses would start turning it up a little bit. It just took them a little while to get warmed up, and then obviously just all gas from there. Not a lot of defense in the second half, as we saw. So. The
ball, the JJ Lapp down the sideline. He's been a home run hitter for them, I think, just about all year. Only had 2 catches on the day, which is kind of unbelievable. But when you have other guys around him that make massive plays, he's good for one long one just about every single contest these guys play. The receiving core for Cortland, I don't think you can give them enough credit. They've got a dog throwing it to them, but they're still hauling in some insane grabs.
Yeah, Burgess, Iovito, and Lapp. Lapp at that 65-yarder, as you were saying earlier, he doesn't have that. He only has 1 catch for 10 yards. That's kind of uncharacteristic for him. But I'm sure North Central was probably keying on him pretty hard because he's just a big playmaker. But then when you key on one other guy, Burgess, that goes off for 12 catches. Iovito has 2 touchdowns. It's like, it's one of those things where you're picking your poison, like literally picking your poison. It's like, You close one guy up, these other guys are gonna be wide open.
Oh, that might be the poll coming in for the ratings. That's what it's calling.
Yes, it is. I don't even know who's calling my house right now. I don't know.
We don't. Hey, we're not big time enough to get those calls yet. But yeah, that's what yet. When Boys came on the show just a couple weeks ago, he talked about that. Like, these teams are keying in on JJ, and that opens up the passing game for everyone else. And what that does for their offense, I think, can't be understated, because even though he's being dialed up on like that defensively from a scheming point, he's still due for a home run shot just about every time that dude is on the field. But the connection between the receivers, the rapport he has with them, especially with some of them being younger guys that haven't been around as long. You said it, dude. Like, he was obviously the best quarterback on the field, and that was the best quarterback performance we've seen in D3 all year.
Yeah, and also, as long as we're talking about the post-game interview, one of the first things Coach had said was Zach Boyes should be the Gagliardi winner, and honestly, I agree with him. I'm not taking, like I said, I'm not taking anything away from Luke Lannon. The kid is an incredible player. He'll be back next year for North Central. I have a feeling they'll be back in the championship game as well. But man, oh man, the way that Boyes the way the ball jumps out of his hand, I don't know if I necessarily see that from Lannon. I think he's a little bit different style of quarterback. He's a guy that can run for 100 and throw for 300. You know what I mean? But Boyes, man, the way he just stands in the pocket. I think the one throw in particular that I remember, it's teach tape. So it was 31-31. I think it was like, I don't know if it was first or second down, but they're probably like the 30-ish yard line. Takes the slide step, maybe a 3-step drop, and just fires a glance shot right over the middle of the field. Gets the first down of the drive, and just, man, oh man, that play set the tone for the whole drive. And then obviously they went down and took the game-winning score to go up 38-31, and then the rest, we saw it was just a miraculous finish.
So. I just found it. So, yeah, right here off the play action, just the zip right across the middle. And like you said, that sets up a huge drive for them. And like you talked about his poise in the pocket, you don't see a lot of that. And Lannon is a guy that gets very crafty. And we see that from Boyes here, right, too. The way he gets away from pressure just a few plays later. That was 4th and 5. It looks like they might get him in the backfield. He shrugs off a defender and comes forward and gets probably 10 to 12 yards on that rush. The quick game for Cortland was working extremely well. They had a lot of short game dialed up, and then they would the double moves must have been big for them, because you see Boyes throwing that shoulder on the pump fake quite a few times. So I didn't really see the receivers on many of those, but they had to have been dialing up potentially some double moves and some other deep options for him.
Yeah, which is honestly kind of taking a pretty big risk, being that North Central has a really good defensive line.
Yes.
And when there's risk also brings reward, and we saw them get rewarded by taking a little bit of some deep shots, double moves, etc., as you mentioned before. So.
Yeah, man, and to talk about the Gagliardi Trophy a little bit too, it's very interesting, but those ballots are turned in, I believe, right around the second round of the playoffs, right? Which is just the way it is. Part of me is like, if you're going to do it then, you may as well just do it at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, and
which would make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think Boyes is too upset. I think he'd rather have.
I think he's all right. I think he's.
Cool. I think he's doing okay.
I think he's just
with that being said, also, I think Lannon would trade his Gagliardi for a national title trophy in a second. So.
Agreed. Yeah, and this was the guys on the Around the Nation podcast from D3Football.com had talked about this is the first championship win for a Northeast team since, I believe, 1991, and the last time a team from the Northeast had even played in the championship since 1999. So shout out those guys. They do a great show over there, so be sure to check them out. But it was unprecedented for this side of the bracket to win this year, because you talk about the left side of the bracket with teams like North Central and La Crosse and Wartburg and Whitewater, and you go down the list. I think a lot of people wrote off this side of the bracket unless your team was wearing purple uniforms, and that might have come back to bite them in the ass, because the social media folks were out in arms before this one, and with some lopsided score predictions. And admittedly, I was going to take North Central to win as well. My prediction was that they'd win by 10 points. I do believe. I'll have to rummage up my actual score prediction, but they proved me wrong along with a lot of other people, and I couldn't be happier for them.
So, yeah, I do believe you have my receipt of my score prediction.
I do.
And
would you like me to find
it?
Had
North Central kicked the extra point, tied the game at 38. Pre-game, I predicted 41-38 North Central, and it was an extra point away from being so possible from happening because, obviously overtime and then if Cortland would have scored and then North Central would have just kicked the field goal, I could have had an exact score. Could have been
41-38 thriller, calling it at 6:07 p.m.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a D3 insider for a reason, baby. I think I got a pretty good grasp on what's going to happen in a game. So
yeah, and you know what? That's good. I think my understanding, especially at the D3 level, has come a long way this year, certainly. And some performances to certainly not be left out. D'Angelo Hardy, we see him right there, still very much that dude. He had some huge catches down the field. They let him tote the rock out of the backfield a couple times. That was big. But let's talk about the 2-point attempt, Jim. I don't hate the decision to go for 2. I don't love it. But obviously the play call, I think, is where a lot of people got tripped up with this North Central offense.
Yeah, so I went back and kind of watched the replay, and they did not have numbers on that side. They were 6 on 5 in the favor of the defense, and I think what they were trying to do, and again, I could be completely off. So I don't know if you remember this, but they were running a play, and before they could finish the play, they called a timeout and reset the play.
Yes,
they're rolling out to the right. There was either wide open receiver or Lanning could have just walked it in. Call a timeout, and I think they tried to get a little too cute, being they try to fool them to run it left or something. But here's what I'll say about that call. I was Brad Spencer, one of the best coaches in the entire country, not even just Division III. This is his first game he ever lost as a head coach, right? I love quarterback power. It's my favorite play in a playbook. I loved it. It was my bread and butter all through high school, everything. I don't like it on a 2-point conversion. That's just me. And I love it on 2nd and goal, 1st and goal, 3rd and goal, 4th and goal. Sure. I don't know. I'd rather just give the ball to Chuck Coleman, that huge running back they have.
Yes.
That guy's 230 pounds? Again, I'm not taking away from Landon. You give the ball to your best player and the game's on the line. Sure, no problem. I'm sure he's probably thinking this as well. Maybe just it's almost and again, they didn't throw the ball, but it's almost kind of like the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. It's you have this humongous power back who's been having a great game. You're in for 95 yards. Just give the big fellow the ball. I don't know, man.
There's a weird balance.
I'm not sitting here saying I would have gotten, but I don't know.
There's a weird balance too, because I talked about earlier in the D2 championship game when Mines is taking out Matoka in favor of a Wildcat setup. Why are you taking your best player out of the game? Matoka can run the ball. He also has the threat of throwing the ball. When you put Landon Walker in, a big body, and that against this Harding defensive line that you've not been able to move all day. Not exactly the case for North Central. Very different situations. But yeah, it was very interesting. And hearing, I'm blanking on Cortland's head coach. Is it Fitzpatrick? No.
I see his face in my head right now. I just can't remember his name.
I'm totally blanking. But hearing him talk after the game, right, and, he made a very good point about, when someone comes up, I'll find it, Jim, don't worry. It's Fitzpatrick, Kurt Fitzpatrick. And when somebody comes out for a 2-point like that, the timeout ended up being very critical because they start to run that play and you spook them with the timeout and make them change or maybe go back and rethink their call and come out in something else. That timeout could have proved to be, well, no pun intended, but very timely for the Red Dragons, because that goes and they switch it up and the play call for North Central. So I'll pull it up so the people can take a look at it one more time here. And they score. They have the chance to set the scene. They have the chance to tie it up and maybe force overtime with a kick. The direct snap to Lanin. He bounces it outside, and just about every single Red Dragon is on that side of the field ready to take him down. This was ridiculous, and I'll give it one more time here. I don't even know how to describe it, dude. This was the game. Obviously, there's so many things that lead up to this, man, but this was, I was freaking out. This was just a ridiculous, the anticipation and everything that kind of led up to this moment was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, they had half of Menominee, Wisconsin on their feet in my buddy's garage watching the game. We were all proud because, we were all cheering for Cortland. I mean, I know I was, but man, oh man, I just love to see the underdog win.
Yeah, I hear that.
It was awesome. It was great. It was great.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, with that said, they wrap it up. They bring home the ship. The attempted onside recovered up front by the Red Dragons, and that would spell out victory for Cortland. Boys, they run a few plays, and then they just kind of knee it out, take that thing down, and it was a very fun game to watch and just to be a part of, as far in the fact that we cover it. But very awesome. And boys, is another year, which is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously look for Cortland to make another deep playoff push, but I'm sure their buddies over in Ithaca are not too happy about them taking home the crown. So I'm sure Ithaca will be coming out firing for that. What was that, the Little Jug or something? What was it?
Cortaca Jug.
Cortaca Jug. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Cortland, Ithaca.
Yep.
Cortaca. That's how you remember it. But yeah, the post game with boys who, again, we've had the pleasure of having on here. Great dude. He wins that. It's the most outstanding player. Why is it just not the MVP?
No idea.
Don't ask me.
I don't know.
What are we doing? Yeah, but otherwise, we can look at the final AFCA rankings. How about that? We'll close out on that, dude.
Sure.
They update these, after the playoffs obviously conclude, and here is the tweet from the AFCA. You see the top 5 there. Cortland, obviously, number 1. Number 2, North Central. And then it gets interesting. Wartburg, La Crosse, and UW Whitewater come in at 3, 4, and 5. That's what we talked about earlier. The left side of the bracket, incredibly stacked. And the Coaches Association, and as well as the D3Football.com poll, they both seem to agree with that pretty wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to agree with them as well. I mean,
yep.
I mean, look, Whitewater lost to Wartburg. Wartburg lost to North Central. La Crosse lost to North Central.
And look at the years they had, obviously, the resume up to that point, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly. And, I'm a big Wyatt guy, obviously. I wouldn't have been, totally against having La Crosse at 3, honestly. But, again, Wartburg went a little bit further in the tournament, so you got to give it to Wartburg. But, man, oh, man, that La Crosse offense was something else, dude. That was an electric offense. I would have liked to see La Crosse and Wartburg match up. I know they matched up last year in the playoffs, and Wartburg did them. But I wouldn't have been shocked to see La Crosse at 3. But
no, and seeing that in person, dude, I don't blame you, because that was very fun to watch. And looking at the kind of the rest here of those, like the teams that rounding out the top 10 and so on, as we just kind of quickly wrap it up. We've got Randolph-Macon, Alma, Johns Hopkins, Mount Union. So there's the rest of your top tier right side of the bracket. And then Grove City at number 10. You've got Trinity, Aurora, Wheaton, Susquehanna, who had some very quality wins. Actually, the only team to beat the national champion, which is kind of wild. And they would go on to lose to Grove City, which, again, we're one kick away from maybe seeing Alma or Grove City in the actual championship. So there are so many crazy things that went on. Endicott, Whitworth, Hardin-Simmons, obviously coming out of the ASC. They finished 17th, which has been very interesting year for them. And they've kind of seen a mass exodus in the portal. It's going to be very interesting to see what that Cowboy team looks like a year from now. Ithaca, Muhlenberg, Union, DePaul, St. John's, Barry, Linfield, John Carroll. That rounds out the top 25. Linfield finishing with, not even making the playoffs is kind of a crazy piece from over there. That's a team that has kind of staked their claim in the national tournament. But otherwise, I think I agree with the list. No, not too many crazy surprises, huh?
Yeah, my only complaint, did you say Bethel was ranked?
I don't believe so, no.
St. John's was, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so my only complaint, not even a complaint, just something I wanted to bring up.
Yep.
So Platt, though, had the 7th best defense in Division III, won the Isthmus Bowl convincingly. They blew out Augustana. I, for one, I'm a Wyatt guy, so this is obviously why I'm saying this, but Platteville is a top 25 football team in Division III. There's no reason why they should be off this list. But again, I don't make these lists. This is just my opinion, but I was pretty surprised. And I know a lot of Wyatt Twitter as well was a little bit surprised, because typically you would see the Isthmus Bowl champion at least at 25.
Yep.
I know they're receiving votes. I think they were actually the first team out, so I guess that's fair.
Yep.
But that was my only thing I had to really add to that.
Hell yeah. But it's been a great year, dude. I mean, we're going to have a lot more stuff coming out from us. Our show certainly does not end when the season ends, but it's been fun to follow. We got a lot of good stuff planned, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for appointing me to this position. I appreciate you.
All right, man. I'll see you. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one, bub.